Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about cooperative learning and English language learners. To understand what cooperative learning is, it's maybe useful to understand what it is not. It's beyond traditional group activities. It's actually evidence-based research that identifies best practices for learning in group contexts. Now, for group work to actually work, there are 5 critical elements. They are positive interdependence, individual accountability, face-to-face interaction, interpersonal and small group skills, and group processing. And we'll go through each of these one by one. Okay, so the first element is positive interdependence. This is the idea that if one does well, everyone will do well, but if one fails, everyone will fail. And for this to work, students need 2 things. They need mutual goals and they need assigned roles, okay? So the idea is that there's one mutual product, but it's made up of component parts that each individual is responsible for. This is great because if one student really is not understanding the material, it's in the entire group's best interest to help that student. This is also really great for English language learners because you can differentiate the assigned roles based on things like the WIDA can-do descriptors. The next element is individual accountability. So in individual accountability, each member, as we said sort of in the previous slide, has their own work to do. But accordingly, the teacher should assess that work. The student should have a grade for it so they feel more accountable for it. And in addition, more assessment is good. If I know where I am, I know where I can go. And research shows that ongoing assessment is particularly relevant for English language learners. The next element of cooperative learning is face-to-face interaction. Okay, so with face-to-face interaction, we're really talking all about context here. So what we have to understand about group work, why it's fundamentally useful for real learning, is that we're not learning in isolation, just reading something and struggling through it. We have other humans around us, which is really a great setting for learning, as Lev Vygotsky's sociocultural theories have demonstrated. So when you're in a group, you're not just reading alone. You can discuss with someone, you can argue with someone about something, you can analyze a symbol together, you can share resources, and you can give peer feedback. For English language learners, we know that language acquisition happens best when it's done in real, authentic social contexts, like when people are actually speaking. And so when we're putting our students in groups to work on an academic task, our English language learners are not only learning the academic content, but because of participating in a face-to-face interaction, they are also getting help with language acquisition. The fourth element is interpersonal and small group skills. These are basically life skills. Any avenue of life, whether it's relationships, arts, sports, the workplace, the most important life space of all. You need to be good at these things in order to be good at life. You need to be good at communicating. You need to be good at being a leader or working with a leader. You need to be good at conflict management. You need to be good at compromising with people. And you need to be good at realizing that, debating ideas, that's a really good avenue for inquiry. But we're not debating people. That can be really destructive. And this is really great for ELLs because they're practicing their social language, their BICS, or basic interpersonal communication skills. Okay, the final element is group processing, and this basically means reflecting. Okay, it's the time where you self-assess and you say, okay, what can I do better? You look at your peers and say, okay, you're doing this great, but moving forward, you should work on this. And this is really important for group functionality. If you're having a communication issue and you never address it, it will not get fixed. So it's the time where you can work out the kinks of your group. For English language learners, this means more assessment, which we've already talked about is great for English language learners. And it also allows them to practice more basic interpersonal communication skills, their BICS. So this last slide has a bunch of tips for how to actually implement all of the 5 components of effective cooperative learning. I'm not going to read through every single one of these, but you could pause this and look at them. But for positive interdependence, one good thing is to have group grades. For individual accountability, it's to have individual grades, or use a technique like numbered heads, where one student is called individually from each group to answer a question or demonstrate their learning. In face-to-face interaction, it's really all about structure. So if you don't want it to devolve into chat time, you need to really say, okay, you should be discussing pros and cons, or, Sally, you should be teaching Susie something. For interpersonal skills, you should have rules. You're not allowed to fight or use attack language, or it will hurt your grade. And with group processing, you should give students the opportunity to both peer and self-assess frequently, and it should be about both behavior and academic goals. Some things to consider for English language learners when doing cooperative learning are you can use jigsaw groups really strategically to facilitate both content learning and language learning. So differentiate your groups based on both heterogeneous groupings and homogeneous groupings. And you can use things like the WIDA can-do descriptors to help you build those groups appropriately. You can also differentiate the individual tasks for students based on things like student interest or multiple intelligences. And finally, you should really be rotating tasks. Don't have students always be the summarizer or always be the interviewer. Have them develop multiple skills. This final slide here shows my references. Thank you so much for listening.